Welcome back to Don't Lift Off. So this episode is going to be looking at simulators, whether simulators are a good tool for karters moving into car racing or for people that do track days to try and improve their technique away from the track, or maybe for professional racers to continue developing their racing and driving technique at home in between races. So the audio today, I'm using a remote microphone. It's not the best quality in the world. I've just ordered something that's going to make it better quality for the next podcast I do that's out in the field, so to speak. So please bear with me on that. But anyway, I hope you find the content interesting. My attitude towards simulators used to be kind of the same attitude that my friend touring car driver Phil Bennett had towards track days in comparison to racing, which was like track days were like equivalent of having a wank compared to full-blown sex. I'm not sure whether that's the best analogy to use for a podcast, but hey, don't lift off.
So today I'm heading across to go and see, funnily enough, another one of my old friends. Bit of a common theme here, right? Simon Mason, who runs a company called Sim Dynamics. So Si's invited me over to have a look at what a modern sim is like, and he's actually entered me into a race which is going to be good comedy value. Now, my background with sims stems from a long time ago. I used to be into sims back in the 1980s. In fact, the first one I remember playing to death was a game called Revs, or Revs Plus to be absolutely correct, on the Commodore 64. Now, Revs was written by a guy called Jeff Crammond, and it was a simulation. Initially, it was on the British Formula 3 season, and the initial game, which was released on the BBC Micro a year or two before, was only around, I think there still was the national circuit, and then they released Revs Plus, which made the steering a little bit easier because you're just playing on like two keys, or just a joystick, and a space bar to accelerate and like Z to slow down. And Revs Plus expanded the tracks, but it was the first proper simulation. And the guy went on to produce some mega sims. So he made another game called Stunt Car Racer, which is really good dynamics. He was really good at going over jumps, and all the suspension worked really well, and it was just a really, really addictive game, particularly good if you linked two Amigas up together, two Amiga A500s, which I did with my friend Daniel Cuffley in summer of probably 89-ish. And then he made this excellent game, which was the benchmark for simulators, called Formula 1 Grand Prix in, if my memory serves me correctly, in 1991. And that was kind of the benchmark. Now, in between that, there was another guy started making computer games or computer simulations, a guy called David Kamer from a company called Papyrus. And Papyrus started off with a game called Indy 500, which was played on the Amiga A500. You played it with a mouse. Thankfully, you're only turning left. But again, it was a really, really good simulation. I think that was 1988. Around the same sort of time, Sega Rally might have been in the arcades. There was a really excellent simulation called Winning Run, which was actually running at 60 frames a second. It was a full polygon race simulator, which actually, it was a really seldom seen game, but it was a great simulation. Anyway, fast forward a few years, David Kamer's company also made a game called Grand Prix Legends. It wasn't particularly successful, but again, it was excellent simulation, excellent dynamics. It was actually based on the 1967 Formula 1 season. We used to play it, again, either on a mouse, or for myself, it was on an analog joystick. So trying to drive like a 1967 F1 car around the old Spa or old Nürburgring using like an analog joystick or a mouse was just virtually impossible. And then some people, like my mate Richie Costello and Stu Mosley, they invested in various Thrustmaster steering wheels and played it, properly. And that game actually had a good, loyal fan base, and it had quite a long lifespan. But why am I waffling on about this? Well, this guy, David Kamer, actually went on to produce But once he finished from Papyrus, he went on to create a company called iRacing. And that forms the basis of the simulation that I think Simon's going to be using. I'm going to be learning a bit more about it, but I've heard about this iRacing. Everyone uses iRacing. But that's a brief potted layman's history of it. Hopefully I'll put a few screenshots so you can see what those games were and what that was about. But yeah, Si's told me to put my put my boots in, put my gloves in. You might need some Nomex underwear, probably because I'd be sweaty playing against some 14-year-old. Sorry, that sounds a bit weird, but you know, I'm going to be sitting in one of his sims. So just again, a brief introduction of Si. So we first met at Silverstone in 1996. He was actually my art examining instructor when I did my race license, from when I moved from go-karts into single-seaters. And I just remember it was on the old Southern circuit, and him mainly saying to me, don't spin. If you spin, I have to fail you. Don't spin. And that was probably in reaction to me driving up towards Island Corner on the right-hand side, fully pinned. And considering it's a right-hand corner that's taken nearly flat, that would have been quite an interesting experience for Si. Anyway, we've since worked together, some go-kart races and various things together. You know, I've known Si for, 30-odd years. So he makes simulations for, I suppose, households is your starting point, you know, kind of your sim racer at home, but also for medium-sized businesses, I suppose, and maybe high-end businesses as well. So he's got 3 levels of simulator, which I'm sure he'll run through when I see him. But yeah, cut a long story short, he's invited me over to go and see what a modern sim is. I haven't played a modern sim since I played Grand Prix Legends back in the late 90s. I certainly haven't invested any time in playing one, so I'm looking forward to seeing Si shortly. Here's another random story as I'm sat in M62 rush hour traffic. Highest motorway in England, apparently M62. Anyway, you may hear once or twice Simon calling me Dretty or Dundretti. And there's a bit of a story behind that. Circa 97, 98, I'm working at Silverstone, junior instructor, just done a couple of years of Vauxhall Junior, learning the ropes. And I ask if I can do single-seater briefings. And I'm not really that confident in talking to anyone publicly. Not that I'm any better now, but I just give it a go anyway. But anyway, so there was a lad who was doing single-seater briefings on the day called Jamie Hunter. Jamie Hunter, ex-karting champion. I think he was Formula Renault champion, Renault Spider champion. Sadly, no longer with us. Died on the M1 in a car accident 20-odd years ago. Anyway, Jamie was a lovely fella. And the very first day I got to Silverstone, I'd forgotten to bring my wallet. Back in the days when you needed a wallet. And, you know, Jamie bought me lunch and kind of just took me under his wing a little bit, I suppose. But anyway, so we go to do this single-seater briefing, and he said, yeah, come in, you can come into my classroom and just see what we do. So we're in the old Silverstone Drive building, and we're going to into the briefing room. And before we wait for customers to arrive, Jamie says to me, "What's your American accent like?" And I'm like, American accent? Like, why the hell's he asking me that? I was like, well, yeah, it's all right, yeah. Like, just a really random thing to ask me. So he said, well, you can sit down at the front here if you like, and you can get a good view of what's going on. You can see what I'm writing on the board and see what I'm telling the customers before we go and do the single-seater experience on the Stowe circuit. So I sit down at the front, customers come in. So Jamie starts his briefing. Morning, guys. Welcome to Silverstone. Hope you've had a decent journey here. My name's Jamie Hunter. I'm an ex-Formula Renault champion. I'm currently racing in Renault Spiders. Just like to introduce you to a special guest we've got here. This is Antonio Dundretti. He's an exchange student from America, from Indianapolis, and he's here to learn about what we do over here in England. So I'm like sat there and I look around and I go, morning, guys. And then carry on the whole experience with this slightly ropey, like mid-Atlantic accent, a bit like Steve Deek's accent now. Anyway, and carry it on, not just in the briefing, strapping people in, sending people out onto the circuit, waving flags, talking on the radio, the whole thing with this really ropey comedy American accent. But the best bit is, and the best cringe bit of the story is, so we've done the experience. I'm walking across the gravel car park between the Stowe circuit and the drive building. And as I'm walking across, so embarrassing, I'm walking across, these couple of guys who've done the single seater experience goes, all right, mate, so how are you? How long have you been over here? You over here on vacation or what? Yeah, I'm over here on vacation. And the bloke looks at me in the eye and goes, come off it, mate. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry about that. That's really embarrassing. And then I walk off. So, yeah, tribute to Jamie for naming me Dundretti, which I actually put on my pit board for several seasons when I was racing in Lotus Cup UK. Dundretti. Anyway, long story. Thought I'd tell you that while I was bored, sat in traffic.
Right, what do I do? Same as I did.
Yeah, just send it, stick it in gear and send
So
it.
that was brakes that you just...
Yeah, just to push the brake pedal harder. You can nail them. Absolutely nail that brake pedal.
You know what? It's surprised me how much easier it is to pick up than what I remember sims. Normally, before I've been firing it off, but it's...
Don't you think that's just because there's more feel, so it becomes more logical? Because
Probably,
it's logical,
yeah.
you can work through. Because
Yeah.
in the old days with them, it used to be you'd be driving and you'd get into a bit of a rhythm which felt just like excessively smooth, and then you'd have an off, you'd spin somewhere, have a crash. You think that wouldn't happen. I know where on this earth would I have lost that in the real world.
Yeah.
Whereas but generally now,
that's what I've tended to. It's tended to put me off them a little bit.
Yeah,
because
me
I
too.
just thought, this is a bit. It's a bit too artificial. Where it's getting closer and closer from.
Everything that goes wrong in there now.
Oh, shit, that'll be the.
Yeah,
Not
other pedal.
braking.
Your other pedal.
That's the night video. Not breaking.
Oh, that big off. That was a few years ago, wasn't it, on an airfield day?
It was offset pedals, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was not a pleasant moment for the fella.
At the end, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry."
I think what you find now on Sims is that everything that goes wrong, you can, if you analyse what you were doing, which is what we should do in the real world anyway, if you think about what you were doing, there is a reason behind it. Very, very few situations where you go off and you think, well, that just wouldn't have happened, that's just wrong. Very. It does happen occasionally, but it's very rare. The worst one is when you're racing people. You can get some knocks and bangs where the person that shouldn't have come off worse is the one that comes off worse. Just if you're on the inside of a car and you get tapped from the outside, the one on the inside sometimes goes off depending on your track position, which is that's a bit naff. But
that was quite interesting, actually. So I was watching the Max Verstappen laps around Spa. When it's a race where he starts like 19th. It's in the wet, which is quite interesting, and he wins. But when the move he makes to get the lead, he kind of rubs down the inside. What am I going to third gear for? Paddock for?
I have no idea. But you've got the racing line there to guide you. So
yeah, thanks, mate. No, yeah, but
and Billy's saying,
does it tell you don't go down to third gear, Billy? But yeah, he kind of rubs alongside the other guy, and it's clearly a move that they do in Sims to kind of slow the other guy down, or it's obviously an acceptable.
There's definitely an art. There's a lad that has one of our Sims who's unbelievably talented in sim racing, and he would be in the real world, I reckon, as well, in like Remy, and he makes driving on the sim look like the real world in every single area.
Really?
So the bits that I struggle to process as an older gentleman driver, he just makes it look like it's just that feel on the brakes, and you can see that in Verstappen. He said all the top guys.
That was the impression I got when I was watching Max. He just the way he was positioning it on the curb was like, holy crap, that looks really consistent.
But if you've got that level of efficiency, imagine what that's doing to you in the real world.
I'm still not pressing those brakes anywhere near hard enough, but I'm still conscious. I'm kind of into real world letting the tyres warm up. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It kind of feels like I'm driving someone else's car. Yeah. And I'm looking after it with full responsibility rather than it's my own car. Let's see what I can get out of it.
I'll let you into a secret. If you crash this, there's no bills.
Thanks, mate.
Just get it sent.
Okay.
If you watch one of like my outlaps on not maybe around this circuit, but some of the other, especially some of the international circuits, my first 4 or 5 minutes in a car will be lots of offs and crashes and moments and so on as I'm working out what can go, and then from about 5-6 minutes in, it starts getting more and more efficient.
Yeah, so you're kind of what I would say calibrating.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So the brakes are a lot better than I originally thought they were. Funnily enough, just like the real world.
It's a shame because this simulator at the moment is set up for rallying, so it's it's got a big wheel on it and the sequential
like
shifting.
it, mate. I'm a bit old.
When you get on the other one in a bit, you'll feel the difference, and also the way the vision is taken up by the round wheel to me just feels a little odd on a sim.
Yeah,
but with rallying, obviously it fits. I'll put you on the rally sim later, but it's such a different discipline.
Rally sim, that sounds good.
It's
like Sega Rally.
Yeah, and some. I think you can get into pinning the gas on the exits more assertively now as well. But definitely more brake pressure as you go in.
Yeah, okay. So just lean on it more.
Yeah. Get into it hard to start with at like 85%, something like that on the initial brake.
Locking up just towards the end there as well. Good. Actually, that's interesting. You can hear it actually.
The sound is essential on a sim. That's why we always use headsets, because you've got to be. It's not just about the immersion. It's about you don't have any other cues. There's no weight transfer, all that stuff. So you need the sound to tell you what the limits are.
Yeah.
Like a prime example is going into a corner and the rear end locking up. You can hear it and you can feel the diff and so on.
Yeah.
And you could, but if you're on an external audio system, you don't pick up on that as quickly. Whereas in a headset, it's much more obvious, and you've then got the choice to drive accordingly or to just keep blaming it as a car handling issue.
I can feel I'm on the brakes. I'm driving it like a road car. Actually, I'm not being binary enough on the initial pressure.
Yeah, I can see. I haven't seen you go over 50% yet. There we go. That was 60, 70. So I'm looking top left, where it says 3 at the moment, now 4. And just to the left of that, there's a green bar, that's your throttle. When it goes red is your brake. And that was about 60, 70% again.
So up into paddock, where do we reckon? About 70%, something like that?
No, 80 on the initial. That's still 70, which is why it's pushing you now. So it's not knocking the speed off. That was better. So all that was needed then was just
second gear.
Well, yeah, and to keep the brake on a bit longer just to get it to rotate.
Yeah, just to.
And if it didn't rotate, then what I would do is put a bit more rear bias into the car on the brake bias, and that will give it the rotation. You just keep cranking those numbers.
So that was rear end, I think. Just like, am I wrong? Am I feeling things that I'm not feeling?
I don't know. I missed that, to be honest. I was too busy talking.
I just felt it sort of almost like it was skipping out a little bit. I can actually feel my intent on. My emotion in the car, I'm attacking it more.
It's looking good. You're looking like you know what you're at now. I want to take the racing line off it. I find it quite annoying. It's very useful if you're like on a completely new circuit for a couple of laps. I generally don't use it, but if you're new to racing and new to motorsport, then it's useful for that. But mainly to just sort of judge when you're coming up to the slower corners.
Yeah.
Because of the way it changes to red as you get to the brake zones, you just use it for that, and you get your head around it.
Just struggling in the slow corners a little bit. That's better than the last lap, at least, I suppose.
You say so, Dreddy.
Yeah, thanks, coach. What am I doing? Too many years. It feels like the first time I drove a Pro Sport at Alton Park, Pro Sport Radical, when it was sequential shift before I knew what the gears were. And you had to count the gears.
Right.
And every time I arrived down at Lodge Corner, I realised as I pressed the accelerator, you're in the wrong gear again.
And these things need to be singing, don't they? With the bike.
Yeah.
For people watching this, they won't hear the engine like you're hearing. Oh, Dundretti.
It's not in the barriers.
No, it's not in the barriers. Just a grand's worth of tyres, 1,500 quid's worth of tyres. That's it.
Right. Yeah, I've got the brake pedal this time.
Good lad.
The main difference from a coaching perspective is you don't have to finish the session before you do a debrief. You can do a debrief on the fly. So you can stand next to the sim and talk about what you've just done straight away rather than going in, downloading data, getting a coffee. It's much easier to make...
and you can connect the headsets up so you talk directly through the headset.
Oh, really?
So that's what we do here, yeah. Yeah, and when you're doing online coaching as well, it's literally like the person's in the room with you on the headset using a thing called Discord. So it's just like pit-to-car radio, but clearer.
Right.
And you can, I've done sessions where I'm in a car leading the client around the circuit and then following them and then sitting alongside them. So I'm watching like I'm watching you now, but on my screen. The only thing you have to be careful of with a sim for that kind of thing, without giving too much sort of my knowledge away, is that the timing of what you're seeing reproduced isn't perfectly accurate. So it's more a patterns thing.
Right.
But then that suits me anyway, because that tends to be how I coach anyway. I coach more on patterns rather than specific details. What on earth are you doing, Dretty?
We're just showboating and show you what angle I can get out of
Nice,
it.
nice. That reminds me of your passenger ride days at Silverstone.
I'll do it one-handed next time.
Oh, look, he's off again.
Funnily enough, Mr. Dan, can we have a word? Sorry, Chris, did you see the gravel?
So we're taking bets on 2 or 3 spins today. What?
Do you know what? It's interesting when you take the racing line off, and it's like giving you, taking you off the baby ropes.
Like I say, I generally don't use the racing line unless it's like this was set up for a corporate event before, which is why it was on.
Yeah,
but it's useful for just if you're on a circuit you don't know. Like the really good one that I used on last was Saxon Ring. When they put that on the sim, that is a really hard circuit to learn. I've never done it in the real world.
Saxon Ring, is that in Austria?
Yes, yeah, very up and down, lots of long duration hairpins on curves, so camber changes in the road and so on as the corners are going on. And so I found it quite difficult to get my head around it to start with. 4 laps of following the racing line, which was just prompting me when to brake basically, and suddenly the circuit started to come together, turn it off and then get on with it.
Right.
So it's useful for that kind of stuff.
And it's like to learn a new circuit is useful as well, isn't it?
It is, although I'm a big believer, if you know what you're doing as a driver, you work the circuits out pretty fast. It's the nuances of where you find pace is the tricky part.
Yeah.
And the difficult thing on the sim, though, is that because there's no sensation of speed, there's no consequences or fear or anything. So we tend to sort of just go at things a bit too quick, like, brands like the real world, but you know what's coming up. Whereas in the real world, on a new circuit, you're not really aware of the speed and the blindness, and you're not as disciplined, should we say. And so you need to add that in the first few laps on a new circuit you've never been to before on the sim. But in the real world, I think you pick it all up real fast.
Have you ever tried like the 3D versions, like the VR headsets?
Oh yeah, done loads of VR. Yeah.
How do you find those like when it's in 3D? Do you find it's easy to work out the distance?
No. So all 3 that VR does is it's more immersive. So it feels like you're in a real race car, and it's awesome for that.
Right.
But the problem with VR is you can't adjust things quickly and easily. If you're really serious, you need to be able to make some adjustments quite quickly to fuel settings, and there's just things you need to be able to access. It gets a bit hot, a bit uncomfortable. Some people have had motion sickness with VR, which they never have with anything else. I can think of 2 very... Oh, well saved, sir, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Turn the wheel.
Good lad. Saved like a professional, if I might say.
Down to second gear for the next corner.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, you saved it. As long as you survive, that's the critical bit. A lot of people then would have just kept adding lock, thinking, no, I'm going off, and then of course, crash. And the first job of being a competent driver is to manage your risks, manage your problems, and that's what you did then. So VR is mega for immersion, and when you go on the triple monitor setup, you'll see there's more immersion in it. Is it better when you go faster? No, but it just helps with that immersion level.
I'm getting a bit ambitious now. This is quite a nice setup though. The peripheral is pretty good. Like you can look into corners, you can look round corners.
Yeah, I think the most practical setup is what you're in now. So with that's a 49-inch ultra-wide monitor.
Yeah.
And it's easily the most practical because the PC's only running 1 monitor for a start, so you don't need as big a powerful computer as you do with a triple setup. You see the vision perfectly well, but you're also very aware you're on a monitor, so you lose some of that immersion. But then the immersion's only important if that's what you're looking for, if it's more towards the gaming or just the wow factor. But you won't go any quicker on a triple setup than you would on an ultra wide like you're on now. They're both just absolutely just as fast. In fact, a lot of serious, really fast sim racers use ultra wides.
It's interesting when I pick up the throttle, I can just hear it scraping a bit on the front. You can hear it pushing rather than feel it pushing. Is it 4th gear or 5th gear through there?
4th through there.
4th. Oh. choosing right. Oh, shit.
That was optimistic. As soon as you went under the bridge and weren't braking, I thought, oh, this isn't going to go well.
So I went through paddock in fifth. Okay, well.
Dreddy at the wheel.
Firing into the tyres at Druids. That reminds me of, like, the first session at Brands in my Vauxhall Junior. I fired it into those tyres. Literally lasted 3 laps. My old man wasn't impressed.
No, I bet not.
We're off. Red flag. I'll have another go. Let's get rid of
Just put the headset on fully and just go for a lap yourself without talking, because you do need to be really immersed. I'll turn your video off as well, and I think that might be wrecked.
That'd be reeked.
A spot of rallying now. This is how this.
Oh my fuck. Through gate, yeah. I don't think I made it as far as the gate.
Let me click F2.
Jesus, that's what you got to be careful.
Yeah,
It reminds me
there's a
of,
lot of talk in that.
it's like rallying full stop. Everything's really narrow. Not quite as big as last time, though. I keep going in way too late. You need to set the car up. Fuck, wrong way.
That's the problem for us circuit boys, isn't it? When we go rallying, we're expecting more grip.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They always turn in too late. I feel like I'm in second gear when I should be in fourth.
You've done a rally driving course, ain't you?
Of course I have. So, you don't get a sensation of the speed as much as you do on a.
No, I find that with it, but that's a Sims thing though, and that's where the mental discipline I think comes in, and listening to the pace notes, driving to the notes, and that's where it's difficult for us as circuit boys, not rally drivers, because we don't listen.
Go on.
I think that's wrecked.
So Si was just explaining to me that he's got a seatbelt set up on this. Let's see how well we can see it. So this is actually a thing that the Knight Rider set up that tends into the seatbelt as it goes under G-force.
This just helps with immersion, really. It makes you feel more in it, but it doesn't make you any quicker.
This looks proper old school, this circuit. Is it an airfield?
It's a mix of concrete and tarmac. It's really bumpy. It's very physical. Cold tyres doesn't brake really, but you're constantly changing grips. So when you get quick around here, you get quick, like this is on concrete, so it just doesn't turn. Dusky as well.
It looks beautiful.
They do a 12-hour race on here.
I'm guessing this is a fairly high-end setup in terms of like graphics card and.
Yeah, this is. You can get higher resolution monitors, and then it's the 1440 monitor. You can get more expensive ones, but you're into such small details of game now for big cost increases. So it's all about what you want to achieve with this. These are 1440 resolution, 165 frames per second.
Oh, really? Like super smooth then?
Yeah, I mean, I capped them lower than that because you can't tell the difference between like 100 plus. But if you've got that headroom, it means you get less stutters.
Yeah.
This is the trickiest part of the track.
It's quite narrow, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's actually fairly wide in reality.
It'd be interesting to see the feedback from people that have raced on Sebring but never played it on a sim to see how accurate it is. It looks pretty.
I've done it in the real world.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, not raced there. Launching Aston Martin branch over there for 2 days. Going around, it's just like this.
Is it? Nice slide. Sorry, mate. I'm putting you on.
Intentional slide.
Don't talk to me in the braking area.
Yeah. Especially there, Sunny Corner is mental because you go into it so quick. The reason I'm resetting is if I carry on with it as it was, it will have no grip now because the tyres are toast.
Okay. So it's got a tyre model. Then if you flat spot your tyres,
it'll have nothing.
Really.
When he comes alongside, I'll let him come alongside it a bit. It's 1.8 seconds behind. I'll let you come through, and you'll see my dash will have little red markers on it, which will tell me that there's a car there. Because unlike in the real world, you can't see the depth in quite the same way. So you need something that references where they are.
Right.
That way you reduce crashes. If you haven't got a crew chief or warnings that go in there.
Yeah.
That way you don't turn in on people unnecessarily.
Yeah, I noticed that. I wasn't sure if that would be off-putting, but I suppose it's an extra reference.
It's absolutely essential. When you do 24-hour races, if you haven't got one of those on, you won't last.
Right. You just end up turning in on people. And
when you're in the starting levels, when you first start with iRacing, for example, because obviously most people don't have that on them, so they don't realise the importance of it.
So is that a real person in front of you then? Is it?
Yeah.
Hey, up. Yep, I can tell. That's the last corner, is it?
That's the last corner. So you're in there. This is where we exit. Just up. This is
Yeah.
as fast as we to break a little earlier and harder next time.
It's a completely different steering wheel as well, isn't it? It's more like a yoke.
I love this wheel. It's the perfect size. Some people like slightly smaller ones, but they're always choices.
It's just like a GT3, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I like this. This is a feature. So listening to the tyres and the brakes, then I know I can brake a bit harder there. So over the following laps, I'm not going to do the braking. When I start practicing for this, I'll be braking harder later in the future.
Yeah. Just calibrating.
See how bumpy it is?
Yeah.
And when you feel through the belts, it's pulling on the right-hand shoulder at the moment.
I feel you really need to know this circuit to get any consistency.
I've done a lot around here.
Yeah.
I don't know the car that well, but I know the track. So I think off on this one. So these are real dudes up in front. None of this is AI at all.
Yeah.
Because the detail, if they have a lock-up or anything like that, you'll see it smoke. You'll see the opposite lock go into the tyres on the front.
Yeah. He's just had a moment.
So that's the basics of it.
Yeah, looks amazing.
And when you're racing people close, it's just like in the real world. It's about not making mistakes, staying patient.
Yeah, getting into a rhythm.
Exactly. Not trying to brake as late as you can when you're behind someone. You just lock up, go into them, give yourself a bit more time to manage the scenario, to pull it off. Yeah, so that goes this way.
That's mega. No, but getting to, I mean, real world scenario, if you've got a rival that you're trying to beat, then you'd have to kind of just corner watch.
Yeah.
If you were lucky to get some data, and then you're into the whole political thing about getting video and data about between teams and IP rights and all the rest of that. But being able to actually sit on board and seeing what the fastest guys do, that's interesting.
You can hear the engines, you can see how much get a feel for how much he's slowing it up, what stage of the corner and so on. So yeah, that's all really useful stuff. When you're doing races, longer races, you can see what damage you've got on the car as it's going round.
How clever is that?
Watch replays and things. So if there was an incident, and that's a particularly useful thing, especially in the early days of racing on the sim, is when you have crashes, is to watch a replay of the crash, because sometimes you think, oh, he drove into me, turned in the usual stuff that you get in racing. But by watching it back, you can see how sometimes it's just the corner. You as the driver didn't cover the corner early enough.
Yeah.
Gave them a little bit of a window.
Yeah, so you can be honest with yourself and do an honest debrief. Yeah,
and you can do it within minutes of that happening.
Tell me a bit about your Sims. What? How long have you been doing this, and when did it first start? Was it lockdown that you said that?
No, I was doing it long before that. So I did my first. Basically, what happened is I've always been in sim gaming and stuff like you were, and I had a setup in the workshop here. Literally, a wheel on a desk and pedals under the table, all that sort of stuff. And I was doing that, bit of fun. And at the time, this was about 2009 or so. I was racing in Bitcar with a client, and we had to go to Thruxton, and I know Thruxton really well, so that wasn't a problem for me, but he didn't know it at all, never been there, couldn't test there or anything else, and the only option we had was to go to a sim centre to drive on one of their really expensive projector sims and all the rest of it to get the mileage from, which we did. And when I went in and I went on their sim, I saw straight away that things are changing. Like the quality of the feedback and everything. This is not like a game. Still not perfect, but it's looking good. So I came away from that, bearing in mind that we'd moved to Manchester, where we are. And in Manchester, it's not the ideal place for motorsport and transport. It's so far away from everything. I needed to do something else. Yeah. So I thought, I'll do a training centre up here. There must be people up here that want to learn how to drive. But at the time, sims still weren't really... The people consider
they weren't really seen as a training tool so much.
And to be fair, I was partly of that. I was only slowly sort of going into the mentality of I can see the value of what a simulator will do. So I started looking at buying one from them, and it was bonkers money. I mean, it was like 50k or something they wanted to buy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Firstly, I can't afford that.
I
can't justify that cost. I can't see for the life of me how. I'm looking at what all the parts are. I know, I'm quite observant sort of guy. So I'm looking and thinking, the margin in that is obscene.
Yeah.
So, and okay, there's a lot of time and knowledge they put into it, but I've got time. When I'm not coaching, I'm up here, so I can do it. And I'm quite technical, so I borrowed a load of money to buy the bits. So I bought all the bits. They came in from America and from Germany, and they came.
How do you know which bits to buy then? Just
research.
Research, yeah.
Lots of looking, lots of thinking, lots of researching. And this is 12 odd years ago now. Yeah, 12, 13 years ago. And I built it, and I said to myself, if it doesn't look like it's going to do well as a training centre, then I'll just sell the sim, no problem at all. And it didn't do particularly well. It was ticking on, but it was never going to, for what it cost me. But one of the people that came said, well, can you build one for me? So, okay, I looked into that. And it just sort of went from there, really. And that sim is still in use now. That first one I built, that's down near Derby.
So what sort of timeline was this?
That was 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realise you'd been doing it for that long.
Yeah. And then it's always been a sideline thing. And it's only really as we came into COVID and simulators, I had time to think. Because, it's like in our job, driver coaching, training.
Yeah.
You're up and down the motorways, you're all over the country. You haven't got time to think until Christmas, usually, about what am I doing? Where am I going? COVID came, and I was like, clearly simulators are the thing. People are frozen.
Yeah, because all the F1 boys were on it. This is a conversation we had earlier. It was like you're watching like the Indy 500 with Fernando Alonso racing against some 14-year-old bedroom gamer, and then. Yeah, and it was good entertainment. Yeah. It was the entertainment, wasn't it? It was on YouTube.
It was good, really cool. Good escape, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Thing. And so people just started sort of saying, because they knew I was into Sims, I supplied quite a few by them, and not big numbers, but ticking along. So people then suddenly, it's like, well, about Sims. What do I need? What do I get? And I thought, well, the name I was running under them was Motorsport Tuition, which is what I did. I did drive training for many years. I thought, well, that doesn't fit simulators. It doesn't really fit the modern world anyway, so I need to come up with a better brand. And that's where it started during COVID, and it's just sort of gone on from there. So it's really good. The thing I've been really lucky with it is the technology is now at a point where it is really good at an affordable level. Whereas even when I started, it was just starting to turn. I knew things were coming out, like the direct drive wheelbases that we use now. I knew they were coming. There was still quite a lot of money, but nothing like as much as they'd been before. You had to get them in from America before to be remotely sensible on money, what they cost. And so it just coincided with a lockdown that the quality of everything was getting better and more affordable, and more people were coming into the market making the hardware that made simulators much more practical. And that's where it all came from.
Well, so in the introduction I did on the M62 on the way over here is like, I'm not really sure what to expect on this one. So we've kind of done this back to front. We didn't do an introduction, which is the standard for my podcast, really. But
I like to mess it up, interesting. Nothing
bit of rock and roll.
Yeah, I know I'm pretty dull, but
there's hidden depth there. But so I've got on this first one, which stuck me straight into an SR. Yeah, cheers, mate.
Well, it's isn't it?
Well, SR3 with like half the power, maybe. Like SR8, I'm renowned for causing a red flag whilst trying to drift it around Luffield, but that's another story. Whilst under a red flag, actually.
Red flags, if you captain, there's a few there.
Drifting an SR8 whilst under a red flag, it's another story. But the thing that most struck me was how easy it was to pick up, actually. And that's like, so I've driven simulators, I suppose, 10 years or so ago, when it's along for a corporate day and you sit in, and I just keep firing it off. So I've just spent, 20 minutes or so on that, and I can feel after about 3 laps I'm starting to drive with intent, as John Pratt would say. I'm starting to, you can see, right, I can attack this corner, I can get in, and I can pick up the gas that little bit earlier.
If they couldn't do that, I wouldn't be involved. Because, Tom, we've been in the same industry, driver train racing, all our lives. And I don't do it because it's a nice thing to do. I do it because it makes sense. Driving quick makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, I struggle. I
suppose to me, what's dragging me in, actually, you're always thinking to yourself, and when it's a more clinical environment that you get when in a sim, I can feel myself being drawn into it, and that was the key thing. That the difference is now, and I suspect that'll grow.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with that's also where they're so good for training, because when you're when you're out in the real world, the consequences of the real world keep you a little bit honest, and the car sort of warns you with a big slide somewhere or going into a bigger slide. It sort of says, wind it back a bit. In the sim, you don't really get the same level of warning. To go faster, because there isn't the same sensation of fear and consequences, we just sort of go harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and then just start losing time. And we're talking, because of experience and so on, fine levels of time. And you've then got to find that window of performance and try and stick with it. And in a simulator, because it basically enforces you, encourages you to drive with more discipline.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that warning of, come on, concentrate, big moments stuff. In the sim, you have moments, but there's a point where where it ends up in a crash. Whereas in the real world, you would see that coming earlier, just because there's more movement, there's more feel. And as a result, the car is almost keeping us on the straight and narrow. The professional level drivers see that earlier, but that's because they're doing a lot more mileage. But on a sim, you can do that much. So it's about the brain training.
Well, the other thing is that, when we've done track days and testing before, you'll work with a driver, you'll go and do a bit of corner watching, or you'll just set your, your V-Box up and running. And then, so what you'll do, you'll come back in, they'll go and grab a cup of tea, and then they'll sit down, and you'll put your SD card in, and then you'll go through. And it's you're doing it as a debrief, which is good, which is that's what you can do in the real world. But the difference in the sim is that you can do it on the fly. And this is what I was kind of like, when I'm driving, I was like, because you're talking to me directly, is that okay? Yeah, and then you stop it after a couple of minutes and say, well, okay, brake pressure. That's what we can look at.
I've always believed, as a driver coach, proper coaching, certainly in the early days with drivers, and to move things forward, proper coaching has to be real time anyway, because it's very easy to sort of just look at data and go, you need to find more time here if you brake a bit later, all this sort of stuff. That's for ultimate pace, but there is a point when you're dialing into a car on a track where, especially with less experienced drivers, you need that input like as it's happening, but not constant. You've got to have a break, you've got to have a breather from it as well, because you've got to be able to rehearse, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it's getting out. It's like the old
not
school thing, getting out, having a fag, talking to your bird, and then you can. But there's a distillation that happens there, and this is always distillation. Yeah, no, I get how hang with me on this one. What I mean is that how when you first get into a car, when you get customers that are doing a driving experience for the first time at a racing school, like you get them in, as John Pratt said, you've got them in a degraded state, so that there's only so much you can absorb in that first session. You do that. And then when you get out and you're like, right, and then you go and talk to the missus, and you have whatever you're going to do, go to the loo, you come back in, and it's that. And so when you then get back in, it's like, actually last time it wasn't too bad, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I feel a bit more relaxed, and that's when you start to drive better. And always the second session is where you get better, because you start to relax, you can absorb more things.
Then you find that when you go in a real world race car and you're with a new team or new whatever scenario, the first few laps, you've got to be very confident in yourself to go, I know I'm not going to do what I know I'm capable of doing at all in these first few laps.
Yeah.
I need that time to go out, what the hell is going on here? What are you doing? What are you telling me? What's this? What's that? You come in, and that only takes 3-4 laps, but you need that 3 or 4 laps just to sort of go.
Just to absorb.
Right, okay, where are we? Okay. And then you can go and get on with it.
The analogy I always used to use is like, it's like trying to pour water onto a dry sponge. There's only so much you can soak up in that first. And always when I do like first laps, like when I did my first few laps on that sim, it's just like I'm driving it like it's a customer's car. Like he stood on the pit wall.
You're worse.
Yeah, just like, well, let's hope this tosser doesn't go and fire it off.
Yeah.
But I want to see some speed.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he's not doing what he said he was going to do, But then it's
But it
it's
interesting, and it changes your mindset. You might, if those first few laps, you've got to allow the thing you're driving to tell you what it can do. You can't just go in and just get on with it, because each car dynamically performs slightly differently. They're all different. Tyres change the same car. The age of the tyres will change the nature of the car. So it's building an experience level is crucial. And those first few laps always installation, and that's that's racing. That's why we love it, because it's not always the same. It requires a bit of thinking, a bit of experience, and a bit of patience.
Yeah, something that I did a little introduction, but I didn't cover off that you are still an active racer. I think that's when you're looking at buying a sim from someone, you really, for me, it's all about the calibration and the correlation to real world. So tell me a bit more, because I did Google this, but it's easier to hear from you rather than me trying to blag like I knew what you've been doing the last couple of years.
I've been exceptionally lucky, to be honest, with a client of mine called Chris Allen, who I raced with. I coached actually back in 2005.
Is that Tatrums? Yeah.
And I used to coach him and Gary won the championship that year, and I think he won the following year's championship as well. And Chris was the only person that could really snip at Gary's heels in the second year that they were racing. Anyway, the point is, Chris and I have been mates for years with coaching and racing and so on. And then he went off and did his own thing for a bit and was struggling with cars and ideas and getting excited about things with teams and stuff. So basically ended up with a lot of bad years of racing with the cars breaking down and all that kind of stuff. So he came to me a few years ago and just said, I just want to go racing. As he's getting older, he wanted to be able to race reliably and consistently and be competitive. I'm just super lucky and super privileged that he wanted to do that with me. So I'm racing in a Cupra TCR, which I love. It's the most awesome car. It's fantastic. We're not running it on slicks because of the series we race in.
Yeah.
But the car itself, and some things are just for the job. They're just right, and it's just right.
And it's is it Brick Car Trophy Championship? That's that right?
What we did last year.
Okay.
That wasn't a good year, to be fair. We won.
We nearly won the championship, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a frustrating one because it's one of those things we got robbed of it rather than. And I hate excuses, so I'm not going to go into all the details of it. But and it's no excuses from the team. It's just how things went in the end. We won the second round of the championship, and that blinded us a little bit to performance differences. We then went to the second race. I think we won the second race, and at that point, I'm thinking, hang on, what's going on here? And then because there was quite big performance differences, not with our car, we were in a negative position, but because we'd won those two races, frankly by luck, when you really look at the statistics of the race, and the fact that we were reliable is
well, you're doing like an endurance. Is it endurance races?
Yeah, well they're not 50 minutes, they're not proper endurance. But when you look at what we were doing, we were the ones that were not throwing it off, weren't doing anything silly, but we were running as quick as we could go with that car. I suppose what I'm getting at is the thing that I think shows most of what we were doing is everywhere we went with that car. We went to Club Enduro as well, where there's 7 or 8.
That's a great little championship.
I love it. That's what we're doing this year.
Ah, okay.
Where there's 7 or 8 identical cars to ours, we were always the quickest one by at least half a second to a second every time we went. And it's the same car as everyone else is running.
So you're doing a pretty good job with the car and the driving.
Which is nice for me, because my thing is always that I never got to do, for various reasons, to do anything that really sort of shows what I could do. We all want to be able to race something really super competitive. And I never really got to do that for the usual financial reasons of my personality and all those kind of things. But it's nice now when we're out in this car that we can show what we can actually do. And the nice thing is I know I'm getting slower and we're still doing.
But you're also getting wiser.
Well, that is, I think, is the big
That's
thing.
the balance.
But it is that is the big thing. When you look at our results last year, they're not coming because of our pure pace. I mean, we're on the pace. We're the quickest car, but that will change this year because there's a really, really good driver coming into Club Enduro that will be sort of a benchmark for qualifying next BTCC driver, which I'm really looking forward to. A great mate, and it'll be just fun as well. I'm really looking forward to him joining. But it is experience. We don't go out. We're not chasing setups. We're not chasing this, that, and the other. I'm just what's the package of the race weekend? What do we need to do? What's our focus? Just get on with it. We're not chasing all the nonsense and all the rest of it.
So doing it in the real world and also supplying sims as a business, that to me is like I would buy from someone like you all day long.
You're starting to sound like a salesman.
No, I will. Son of a used car salesman, mate. No, but the point is that you want to buy. What do you want to do? You want to buy authenticity, and to me, it's like when you get something like this, it's just like, okay, I think I might just make that model. Here's what I'd recommend as a starting point.
Yeah.
Having known that from your 30 years of experience of the real world, this is what is going to really help you with this particular element of your driving.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The standards are very important to me personally. The standard of real world motorsport. I don't do BS very well. So it's got to everything that I do has to deliver on what I would expect from what I've experienced in the real world. That's the basis of everything that I do. You know, a prime example I could probably give that, which is an easy one, that anyone that's looked heavily into simulators and understands the hardware side of things, an easy one that I tell every potential customer is like with the pedals. So we have two types of pedal that we supply. They're made by a company called Husingvel. This is a Dutch company. And the simulators are typically supplied with the sprint pedal, which is a really good pedal. It's very accurate, very sensitive, tunable, does everything. But I know that if you're a typical club race car, they are perfect. They'll do the job more than anything else that you need or want to use. But if you're racing, say, a GT car or an LMP car or maybe an F3 or something like that, you're going to want a pedal that's stronger, that's got more, that will take more of a mash on the initial
Yeah.
So I know then you need the upgrade pedals. So that's the kind of knowledge that all the input I have to put into all my sims. So it's not just a case of put nice bits of hardware, it's all shiny, it looks good. It's the tuning and the relevance for use is critical to what I do. Not everyone goes for those options, but that's what they deliver.
It gives
it's not a case of you've got to have X, Y, and Z because it's more expensive. It's actually what's the purpose?
What's going to work for you? So in terms of the sort of people that you supply, it goes from kind of bedroom gamer wants to do more up to sort of business level. So tell me what it is you do then.
So 95% of my customers are racing drivers already, are in racing, and they know the value of simulators. So, and that's a case of wanting one that and being able to afford one that's already built. Because obviously you can build one cheaper. All the bits are available anywhere. Maybe not to the quality and the details that I certainly do, but the hardware is off the shelf. It's not like super complicated. The complicated bit is how you tune it and knowing what works.
Right.
And the big thing when I look at a lot of the questions I get from some of my customers is about the specs. It's very easy to get carried away with, I must have the most expensive pedals. That steering wheel must be better because it's more expensive. And a lot of it is, I wouldn't say nonsense, but it's relative.
Yeah.
It's relative to what your purpose is. And frankly, the hardware now is so good in all areas, particularly the steering motors and the pedals, which is the crucial bit, and the monitors. The only bit that's the long-term variable in the whole setup is the PC.
Yeah.
And that's only because there's a bit of an acceleration now on the graphics quality.
Yeah. It blows my mind. It's like the setup you've got, was it on this one that's running at 160 frames per second?
Yeah.
I mean, like, current
that
phones.
was actually at 240.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Good God, it's like super, super smooth.
But to get 3 monitors to run towards 240 frames per second, you need a monster PC.
Yeah, okay,
and that's where and then of course your cost is, you've got £3,000 on the cost of the PC just so you can run that frame rate.
So what is it kind of price variations, for a kind of basic setup and all the way up to a kind of thing that you've got here?
So again, this is where relevance comes in. So they start at £5,200 plus VAT for one like the one you stood next to now. And that's a simulator that is relevant to real world racers. So I know I'm 100% happy and confident with that simulator that anyone would get on it and go, this is good, this feels relevant. It feels like a good car. And then they go up to over 20k for sim. But when you're into that sort of money, you're into big immersion details.
Yeah.
So you're not going to go faster on a £20,000 sim than you will on a £5,000 sim if you know what you're doing.
It just feels better.
It feels
and it just
better.
Drags you in.
Looks better. Yeah, carbon wheels with backlit buttons and all the shiny bits, the torque belts and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I do one which uses Moser hardware, which is Chinese hardware. Which is just £3,800 they're coming out at the moment, which is again it's got all the sort of the right feel. But I know as a real world driver, if you're a sim racer, it'll be perfect, not a problem at all. But as a real world racer, you'd never quite get the weight out of it.
Right.
That I would expect, that you would expect in terms
from the
of that
steering wheel,
feedback.
the load up of the steering wheel, right?
Yeah, and the pedals, just the way they return, the Husingvel pedals, even the sprints have a nice sort of feel.
Devil's in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you get into the cheaper stuff, it does everything really well. And if you're a gamer, it's not a problem because there's that artificial extra smoothness that they have that you can't carry into the real world. We want more weight, more, everything's feels.
Yeah, and when you're a bit more experienced, then that's what you want. Talking of which, you're going to get me on.
Yeah,
You've loaded me up with a Porsche Carrera Cup, which is notoriously difficult, and
it's the hardest.
Going to lock up and understeer straight off. So I'm just going to fire it off.
I'm not going to put you in that. No, I'm going to put you in the Formula Ford 1600. So
okay.
At least it's slow enough when it goes off. You can see
bit
what's
of old
happening.
school, and I'm not going to roll over and scuff my lid when.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's another thing I think it's worth mentioning with Sims now. I use iRacing a lot. I think it's for me it's the best software for many reasons. It's a whole other subject, but the cars are all massively different, and they are like the real car.
Yeah.
When you drive a Formula Ford 1600, when you first drive it, it's proper loose because the tyres are cold. That it gets quicker and quicker and quicker every lap as the fuel load comes down, as the tyres come up to temperature. But it moves around. First lap, you can spin it so easily. But once you get into like lap 3 or 4 with it, you can hold on to slides in the car. You can rotate it into corners off the way you turn as well as how you use the brake.
Yeah.
And then there's other cars like the Carrera Cup car, which is awesome, but it's really hard to drive because it's quite quick and it locks up really easy when it's cold. And you've got to be quite assertive with the gas, just like in the real cars, coming off the corners. But if you mistime it ever so slightly, if you've got slightly too much lock on at that point, you need to be ready to counter it proper fast. And unlike in the real car where you get that little cue of where the weight is, you've got to do it off what you see and what you feel through the wheel. So it's really, really hard to drive, but the discipline required to drive it is then high. And then you get the aero cars where you're trying to keep your minimum speeds up. There's data on it now that I started using actually the first time. Yes, it's been out a little while, but I was dubious of it. Where as you're driving around, the computer is actually telling you off AI that you need to brake 2 car lengths later.
Really?
Meters later, yeah. I'll show you it in a bit. Carry 10 kilometres more through mid-corner. And it's talking to you like that as you go around.
AI is going to do us out of a job.
But, the thing that's interesting about it...
we need to be AI trainers. That's the key.
Yeah, that's the next thing.
Key.
Well, partly that might happen because, as it happens, I happen to know one of the investors in that company. And he's the one that's been encouraging me to use it for a while, and I was quite sort of negative about it. But now I've used it, it has got its flaws because it talks to you as if you're a pro driver from the point of view that you're driving like a robot, doing the same thing every single lap, which is okay if you spend your life on a sim or racing cars in the real world. It's not if you like the vast majority of us who are in, some more than others, but we're not in it all the time to be that ultra specific and consistent. So what you then get is you can chase your tail with the information it's giving you, which I found yesterday. So it gives you something, so you use it for sound bites.
You start overdriving.
Spin it off a bit.
Yeah.
That's how I think is.
That's a bit like the predictive lap timer when that first came in. Predictive lap timer, it's all right if you know the old school way of doing it.
I hate
that. A little bit harder. Yes, I've missed my apex spectacularly there.
Predictive timers.
I quite use them. Again, it's a little bit like the metronomic thing, and it allows you to keep within a tenth or two. But those of us that are old school, that are looking at your revs on the exit of a curb, are kind of used to just doing it organically, aren't they?
They have their place, but the problem with them, I find, is that it's easy to chase them because you're up. You think I've got to stay up the whole time. In fact, you're already up in
pressuring yourself.
In that next sector you're coming to, you're already up. So if you stay up.
Yeah, just repeat. So I noticed, actually, funny enough, it just comes back to you, and this is just years of experience. I noticed when it was showing me +3 when I'm driving around. I'm heading down to Westfield, and I'm heading up to Dingledale, and I'm just thinking, right, just do the same.
Yes,
just repeat.
That's it. Yeah.
Don't try and grab any more right now. Exactly. You're already 3 seconds up. Yeah. So just repeat.
Yeah.
Just repeat. Because if you try and grab some more, that's when you go far. Yeah.
Which is where you learn again, but I find when coaching people on the sim, it's a very noticeable battle problem. I end up turning it off because they'll start chasing it and they'll start going into faster corners. And,
because they haven't gone through that experience of
patience,
rhythm. Yeah,
stick to your routine and
Right, your cup of tea's going cold. Thanks, Si. I'm going to show how to fire off a Formula Ford 1600.
Yes.
Oh my god. So I think I'm going to have to do my hip straps up. So, I mean, I know
And you've
I
got a
don't wanna
booster
have any
seat as
more
well.
children, but
So they just add immersion, really. They're not going to make you any quicker or anything, because but you'll feel them really
more
pull
worried
against you when you
about
brake.
is how tight they're going to squeeze me.
It's pulling from the back, so you'll be right. Okay, headset's down on your right hand side and get it sent.
Yeah, you see them all with a headset now, don't you?
It's essential being able to
So in terms
immerse
of
yourself.
brake pressure, is there any way of? Is it similar to the last one?
Yeah, so down on your right hand side, Dretty, there's a scroll ball.
Okay.
Just scroll that across to options. Click on that, left click on the mouse. That's it. Right, now press the brake pedal down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, sort of, I want to be looking at getting there, do I?
You do, yeah, otherwise you're going to be sailing on.
Yeah. Okay.
So as with the other car, the tyres will need to come up to temperature, but it's a very hot day, so they'll be up quite quick and they'll go off quite quick as well.
Yeah, you can feel the belts, can't you?
Yeah.
I can hear like a whistling from the brakes as well.
Yeah, the brakes are cold, so as they warm up, that'll go. You're going to hear it in some of the GTs, they grumble, and
That's way too early.
you can be really...
Third or second?
I haven't done enough laps around here recently. Yeah, I think so, but I haven't done enough laps to be totally sure. Yeah, you got to carry quite strong mid-corner speed for...
Going a little bit early then. Well, that's there's a bit of a slide going on there. I
Yeah.
can hear it, but I wasn't listening to it.
So the thing you've got to be careful of now is those rear tyres are going to be quite hot, so it's going to be quite loose.
Right, it's going to be a bit loose.
Yeah, and it's a hot track already, so this car's just really good for getting settled into using a simulator, because it's, as you can see, it's not too fast, but it's got lots of grip, it's very forgiving.
Is that fifth through there or sixth?
Fifth. Just a dab on the brakes and in, like a 50% pressure as you go in, just to get it to rotate.
Taxi to the apex. It's too deep, I think.
Bit too quick in.
Too quick in.
Yeah, it's just taking too long to rotate, and a lot of that will be with the track temp you've got now.
Be a little bit over the limit then.
For you.
How good is this for training tool?
I get the feeling you're liking it.
It's really good. It's really very good.
For me, where I think the real value for people comes in is when you've got other people to compete against.
Yeah.
Whether that's just practice or ideally racing. Yeah, but just doing laps on your own is okay to a point, but there comes a point where you've got to go against other people going quicker than you to then draw out the extra pace out of what you thought was achievable. So I think when you first start with the sim solo, like we're doing now, is the way to get dialed in. But then as soon as you can, get in with real people straight away.
Yeah, that's when it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Especially because it is mostly fixed setup. Especially, I mean, it's a choice, but most of the early level stuff within the sim is fixed. Certainly the most popular part of the sims. And of course, because it's fixed, it's always the same. No one can fudge anything. And naturally, the sim racers, the guys that just... Oh, yeah. But that's the kind of thing you need to be so into it. When you've got someone talking to you like I'm doing now, you're going to lose concentration. I mean, when we do 24-hour races on the sim, we're obviously talking and having conversations going around, but then we've been doing it for so long but you lose pace when we do it.
Yeah.
It's a noticeable, half a second drop in pace when we start chatting.
I noticed that particularly in the radical, that when you're focused, you just get in that zone, don't you?
Yeah, because you've got to be listening. You can hear the tyres scrub.
Yeah.
And you're listening to the diff, and you're trying to listen to where that tyre scrub is coming from, whether it's front or rear. Oh, you got yourself working quite hard at the mid corner there, just to keep it from over rotating. I think we've got a 49-degree track temperature, which is almost unheard of at Silverstone, even at the height of summer. Yeah, because there's an update going on at the moment, so we're having to use the iRacing demo, and you can't change the track temperature in that. Normally, you wouldn't run it this hot because it's very short on grip, which is what you were feeling back there at Beckett's.
It's more committed than that. Not as accurate.
Delta's up well. Oh yes, look at that. That delta fly forward now. Now patience into
What's that with me?
yeah. Does not compute. Now the problem there. You finish the corner. If you look at the top of the screen above the mirror, it's giving you a track control, so that, off track.
Okay.
So that means that time, although it'll record it, if you were in a race or qualifying, your time would be disallowed for that. And it was cutting the apex at Brooklands that did that.
Too much at Luffield.
Brooklands, yeah, apex at Brooklands. They're the things that, as racing drivers, when you first go on a sim,
Too much.
yes, it's me talking to you, and you
No, it's too ambitious anyway.
But when you first go out, you literally go around the circuit, obviously going as quick as you can, but you're trying to find where are the ping limits all the time, because obviously you need to be as close to them as you possibly can be.
Yeah.
So you're looking out for those sorts of things.
Yeah, okay. How much can you get away with?
Exactly.
Is it more consistent in the sim? I bet it is.
Oh, Uber. Yeah, absolutely Uber consistent. Some of them, they're not totally relevant to the real world. So, you can run far too wide at Graham Hill Bend at Brands, for example, on the exit. There's no way you could do that in the real world without getting pinged. But that's all about discipline, isn't it? You only use what you can get, you're allowed to use. So, the sim lets you use it, the real world doesn't. Well, that's a minor adjustment to the real world. The attitude's the same.
So good. So good. Like this, the feel of the steering wheel when you go into there is really good.
Weights up nicely, doesn't it? That's a Simucube 2 wheelbase that you're on, which is like the Rolls Royce of steering bases. The great thing with them is, with all the direct drive wheelbases, to be fair, is that you can tune them to such high degrees. The Simucube was like the first really to come onto the market doing it really, really well, and they've just stayed at the front since. But you can make most wheels. There's some that are a little bit ropey, but oh dear.
I think the tyres. Loss of control. Oh, right, yeah, I see what you mean. Smack my neck, slap them.
Yeah. It's a good car though, isn't it, for learning and for driving?
It's forgiving, isn't it?
Yeah. Get you into like an LMP or GTP or something, and they are so bonkers fast.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. The LMP's lovely to drive. The LMP2 is my favourite car. That and the Porsche Cup car and the Formula Ford 1600 are my favourite cars on the sim. It's so much fun, but in such different ways. But the GTPs, God, they're quick.
Tell you what I'm noticing as well is that, I'm starting to look into the corners for the first time. I'm actually starting to look into the corners.
Good. And that in itself shows you another value of the sim, doesn't it? It's keeping that discipline of...
Yeah.
Because you probably...
looking in.
Yeah, because you probably do like I do. You know the circuit so well. It's almost autopilot initially, but to get real pace, you've still got to keep looking ahead, haven't you? Oh, what are you doing?
Oh, we can't even do a fucking spin turn properly. It's like large stroll. Actually, I quite like these belts.
It's immersive, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I first put them on and I realised they didn't quite do the feel that I wanted, and I've tuned them a lot, but you can't get the release of the brake feel that I wanted them to do. But when I don't have them on, I notice it.
I see what you mean, yeah.
And the immersion level, it just puts that extra level of intensity into the whole experience.
Yeah.
The problem is it's quite an expensive thing to add to the rig, but it's just immersion. That's what you're getting. It won't make you any quicker, but it certainly makes it feel alive. What was that?
Doing?
Shameful driving, shameful. How long have you been doing this?
It's a Beckett's in fourth.
Oh my lord.
Ambitious.
I was going to say you need to go into there slower.
Well, I've exited, that's interesting.
Well, you had a straighter run out, didn't you? But you'd have lost the load in the turn into mid-corner phase.
I don't think I'm braking, are you?
I haven't heard a single lock-up, so no.
Are we going?
Left-hand lane, yeah, that's it. Portimao.
Or we're going to go around the paddock.
So I love driving this car. So it's got traction control,
Okay.
very forgiving, very quick. So LMP2 Delara. Cold tyres, it'll be very loose the first lap. If the steering feels a bit heavy or light, just let me know, because it is a slightly different setup required on the steering for this one.
It's all right.
Okay.
It's okay. It's first gear or something.
First. You'll feel when you're accelerating it off slow corners, it sort of feels like it bogs a bit to start with, like it's off boost, then it picks up and goes.
Oh, okay.
So you've got to keep it singing a bit more than you'd expect, certainly with some of the tighter corners. Oh, dreaded, really? You can be, just so you know, for your own reassurance with it, you can be really assertive with the wheel, so if you need to sort of give it a big old tug to get it back in or something, you can do that. You can't break it or anything that it's mounted to.
That'll be rather that. Fucking hell, you can do so much that exit. 6 speed.
Yeah.
Elevations. Is this second?
First. Just because it has no real bottom end. But when the turbo comes in, it's quite strong. So just be careful now of the tyres, because obviously they'll be a bit hot.
Be a bit hot. Do they cool down?
They will do, yeah, but they'll never quite come back to ultimate pace. But for the first few laps and stuff, it doesn't matter.
Is there a chance of this steering wheel whipping round? Is it risk to keep your thumbs in there or not?
I would keep my thumbs in, treat it like normal in every way. If you get worried by its movement, just let go. But I've never had to. So
Yeah.
You should be able to fight against it. That's why I said with the weight on them, each car is slightly different. So you tune the steering. It's dead easy to do. It's like 2 clicks on a mouse job. But some cars it can be a bit too strong on. But fight against it. You can't break it if it does pull. Think of it like, when we used to do the passenger rides in the Caterhams,
Yeah.
and you get a big old slide going, and you've got to pull the thing back on the steering. It's the same. You can use the same effort with the sim.
Okay, let's go flat.
It's got the grip, hasn't it?
Yeah.
GT3 won't do that, but the Porsche Cup car. But this has got that front end aero grip.
Your neck would normally be giving it some.
I've just been doing Road America in LMP2 this week, and there's a long right-hander on it, and it does it almost flat, not quite. And as I'm going round it, I'm thinking, I'm so glad this is a sim, not the real thing, because I would be dead.
My fucking neck.
Yeah. If you run apex curbs and you're running the dirt on the inside, oh, that's a bit optimistic. And you're running the dirt on the inside, it will start to create a rut
Right.
and throw the dirt back onto the track as well. So there's other cars out with you in a practice, they'll throw the muck up at you.
Is that a third through that first right hander?
Yeah.
Hey, come on, Danny.
But I won't say anything, you just concentrate, get settled in.
Try. Is that second?
Yes, by the sounds of it. Yeah, the way it's pulling, I'd go second. First.
First.
Yeah. I find this one you're in now the hardest corner on the track.
Yeah, it's almost like a double apex.
Oh, that neck's working hard. Right, I'll let you drive.
Tell you a funny story from there. Way too early this time.
It's really slow corner though, so it will feel like it's too slow, and actually it's not. Gearing's quite long.
Second, I guess it is.
Well, I would use first, just because of how flat it is when you first accelerate.
Yeah. That's so good. Oh well, everything.
You're out of the marbles there as well, so it's not turned well.
First. This is really confusing to get my eye into there.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with get my references out there.
Just take the top left of the pit.
I think I'm still very hard with it.
Oh, that swearing and grunting I've been doing when you were driving was...
Mate, thank you for that. That's been
That's a pleasure.
yeah, that's been really interesting. So I think like the thing that I've taken out of that is in the I suppose 10 years since I've driven a sim before, and 20 years since I've actually spent proper amount of time is how much easier it is now actually. And when I say easier, I suppose it's because I've had the background in circuit racing that
It definitely helps if you've got knowledge in driving already, that's for sure.
yeah, I'm not what I found 10 years ago and 20 years ago I was firing it off all the time, whereas I'm firing it off a lot less on this because it's just the steering feels right, and I'm taking the brakes into the corner and it's less frustrating. I think that's the
Big
thing.
time. But that's why I think back, I was just saying to you about I remember Matt Kelly many years ago saying to me about going to his sim centre that he was involved with back then. This is like 15 odd years ago or something now. And back then they were still, to me, very gamey. So I was thinking, I don't want to take my clients down to there. You can learn the circuits off a steering wheel and a thing on your desk at home, which is the only real value, because you couldn't get the weight out of them. You couldn't get the feel.
Yeah.
And then sort of 12, 13 years ago, it's really started to change.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, my attitude changed to them. And that's why we're doing it now. And now they're an unbelievable, valuable tool for learning to drive.
And they're just about affordable for, a club racer or someone that is making their first steps. It's like, what would a car be to buy?
When you think about testing, Ray Grimes always used to say this to me. He's got the best analogy of it, but he is always saying about what it costs to go testing. You think about your typical track day, test days even more, but your typical day out in a car, £1,000 if you're lucky. Once you put your tyres and fuel and all the rest of it. If you're in a proper racing, and by that I mean you've got a team looking after the car and all the rest of it, you're into thousands of pounds. And then you look at what it costs to buy just the hardware. Forget about me building a sim or anything like that. But you look at what it costs to buy the hardware. You've done that cost in 1 or 2 days of testing, and now you've got it forever. It's working on your technique. I think the problem that we all have, and I had it so to start with, when you come from real world racing into using a sim, one of the tricky parts is that with we rely so heavily on the weight movement and the feel of the car from the real
Yeah.
world, especially as old school drivers. Whereas modern cars, with the grip they've got, is much more precision based,
Yeah.
much more feel based, and the cause and effect is much more specific than it
Yeah.
used to be. And that's how sims work, basically. You've got to drive them very specifically.
Yeah.
And that means it's quite a hard transition at first, but it does knock through in how you apply your driving and accelerate your learning.
Well, you see that again. I mean, I know we bang on about Max and Fernando. It's like those boys are on the sim all the time.
Yeah, Max, I mean, crikey.
It's transfers. He's just as quick in a sim as he is in real world. I think he's probably actually the single guy. There's one guy that's moved it on in terms of attitude towards it. It's like he's the sim racer generation.
Yeah,
and it's the first of.
And I really do think the really, really good sim guys will transfer to real cars, I think, just as well. They have to get over, there's that natural thing of the cause and effect, and can you afford the crash and all the rest of it. But their mental application is there. There's a thing Max is doing now with, is it Sebastian Job, who was the Porsche Carrera Cup sim racer?
Oh, yeah.
Red Bull, and they're doing this thing now where he is driving the Carrera Cup cars in the real world, and so
Okay.
And he's quick. He's properly quick in the real world already in those cars.
Yeah.
And there's loads of things going on like that. America's sort of leading the way a little bit with it. There's a big scholarship thing going on out there.
Right.
It's gone where karting was the only training ground.
Yeah.
The only thing I think that's different is the consequences. There are none in a sim. So
Yeah.
mentally you've got to take self-responsibility in a different way to what you would in the real world. In the real world, you get the bill, you get your dad shouting at you, the team shouting at you, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas on a sim, you've only got whether you really take responsibility for the fact you just fired someone off.
Well, they could do like simulated dad scraps or something like that. Like,
what a great idea!
Amazing. Like turn it into like a bit of Mortal Kombat, and like a lad from Bradford come down and someone from Sheffield, and just a proper dad scrap. Oh, I'd definitely play that.
Being up here in Manchester and watching some of the football matches, I'm sure I can get some of those dads along. They'd love it. Any opportunity. Let's have a go. Come on, your son.
On that note,
Let's stop. No, thanks for coming, Dreddy. Thanks for coming.
So that was a really interesting experience. So simulators are easier to drive than I thought they were going to be, and certainly a modern day one is. It's like the Radical. So Simon put me in a Radical SR8 around Brands Hatch as a get used to it. Now they're quite fearsome beasts at an SR8, pretty quick in a straight line, no stability control, no ABS, and I picked it up pretty quickly actually, just like I'd be doing so I suppose if I was back into the real world. It was interesting that they're using the sound of tyres to simulate what you would feel through G-forces in a way. And so that was the main thing for me to dial into, is to correlate more rather than what's happening with your body, but more what's happening with the sound in order to gauge your speed in through a corner. Yeah, that was quite interesting. The bigger sim, the 3-screen sim, wasn't any easier. It was just a little bit more immersive. Driving an F4 around Silverstone, it's again easier than I was anticipating. The use of the brake pressure was very, very relevant for real world stuff, and in terms of me trying to find extra time out of myself, out of my driving, it was that was exactly the same as you would do in the real world. So yeah, all in all, quite I suppose it's a bit of an eye-opening experience. Some things as I expected, and some things considerably more, what would the word be? Maybe nuanced is the right word. It's just a bit more complex, a bit more in tune. The emotive feel that you get when you're driving, if you're starting to put a lap together, it's like, come on, I'm on this, come on. You could feel the adrenaline rising. That I didn't really expect. So yeah, it really has come on. Yeah, I didn't go over today to do a promotional video. That's not what it was all about, although that's, I suppose, we ended up doing. Goodness me, I think you could think of worse people to buy a sim off. I know Si will do an honest job. It's going to be top quality kit. He's fastidiously tested it to the nth degree. It's what he uses sim racing himself. That's probably a really good place if you're looking for a sim. Really good place. I'm driving around Torside Reservoir now, so I'm going to go for a nice run around Torside Reservoir. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll catch you on the next podcast. Remember, don't lift off.
Oh, and don't forget to like, press the thumbs up button at the bottom, and subscribe, which is one of these links either side, and see any other videos if you enjoyed that one. Helps me to make more videos, apparently. Cheers.